imagine this for a second, okay? You have just spent 18 years of your life locked inside a maximum security prison cell.
Wow.
Yeah, 18 years. And it's for a horrific, unspeakable crime that you did not actually commit. So over half your life is just, totally gone.
Right.
But finally, the day comes. You get the hard scientific proof of your innocence. Like the genetic evidence is sitting right there on the table.
It's the moment you've been waiting for.
Exactly. But then the people who hold the keys to your cell, they look at you and tell you that the only way you actually get to walk out those doors and go home, the only way, is if you legally confess to the murder.
I mean, it sounds like a dystopian novel, like the ultimate legal catch-22 where the truth is basically just held hostage by the system itself.
Right. It sounds completely made up, but it's not fiction at all. So let's set the baseline. May 5th, 1993, West Memphis, Arkansas. 3 8-year-old boys, Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers, they disappear while riding their bikes in a wooded area known as Robin Hood Hills.
And then, the next afternoon, their bodies are found submerged in a drainage canal.
Yeah. Now, the details from the autopsy reports that we have in our sources, they are incredibly difficult to hear. I just want to warn you.
Right.
But we have to look at them closely to understand the logistics of what actually happened out there.
According to the medical examiner's reports, the boys were discovered stripped and hogtied, but in a very specific, complex way.
Right. It wasn't just a simple knot.
No, exactly. Their right ankles were tied to their right wrists behind their backs, and their left ankles were tied to their left wrists. And the bindings weren't roping. They were the boys' own shoelaces. Specifically, black and white shoelaces that had been intricately crisscrossed to hold the limbs together.
And the trauma they suffered was just extensive. The autopsy notes detail 1.5 to 3.5-inch semilunar skull fractures on the victims.
And semilunar meaning half-moon shaped. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Which strongly implies they were struck with a rounded object, like a pipe or a heavy branch, not just a flat surface. And Michael Moore even had defensive wounds on his hands.
Meaning he was conscious at some point and actively trying to fight off his attacker.
Yeah. Stevie and Michael's official causes of death were listed as multiple injuries and drowning. But Christopher Byers, however, suffered the most severe injuries.
He did. He was emasculated, and unlike the other two boys, his lungs did not show significant signs of drowning. He died primarily from blood loss and blunt force trauma. Now, initially, the local authorities looked at Christopher's specific soft tissue injuries and concluded that this had to be the work of a sadistic, ritualistic cult.
But the sources point out that when later forensic pathologists reviewed the exact same autopsy photos years later, they completely shifted that narrative by just looking at the science of the wounds. They noted a lack of vital reaction around those specific injuries.
That is such a crucial distinction.
Explain that a bit. What is a vital reaction?
So a vital reaction basically means the heart is still pumping blood to the tissue when the wound occurs. That's what causes bruising and hemorrhage around a cut.
Okay, so the lack of a vital reaction means those injuries happen post-mortem, after death.
Exactly. The modern forensic experts suggested that Christopher's wounds were not from, like, a serrated knife wielded by a cult member, but were highly likely the result of post-mortem animal predation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, turtles, wild dogs, other animals native to that canal getting to the body after the fact. The tissue tearing was irregular, not a clean slice.
Which fundamentally changes the entire profile of the crime. I mean, it moves it from a pre-planned, ritualistic mutilation orchestrated by a cult to a brutal, chaotic murder where nature simply interfered with the evidence overnight.
Right, it's a totally different scenario.
And looking at the logistics of this, I keep getting stuck on the sheer physics required to carry this out. You have 3 8-year-old boys. Subduing one child is horrific enough.
Yeah.
Subduing 3,
Yeah.
keeping them controlled, and then intricately tying them up with their own shoelaces, which means, you have to unlace the shoes first in a dark, muddy ditch, while at least one of them is fighting back.
Right, the defensive wounds.
Exactly. Trying to coordinate all of that in the dark is like, honestly, imagine trying to thread a needle in the middle of a hurricane. Is it actually scientifically realistic that one single person could inflict this much damage and maintain control of 3 victims simultaneously?
Well, the statistical probability in homicides usually points to a single killer, right? Group killings are quite rare. However, the specific divergent details in this autopsy report really defy a simple one-person narrative. For example, the medical examiner testified that Michael was struck with two very different objects.
Wait, really? Two different objects?
Yeah, one the size of a heavy log and another the size of a broom handle.
So two different impact weapons being used at the exact same time.
Right. When you combine two different weapons with the complex, time-consuming shoelace ties and the active defensive wounds, you have a level of physical chaos that strongly suggests more than one perpetrator had to be present just to maintain control.
But here's the problem. The crime scene was a drainage canal. The water effectively washed the bodies clean.
Yeah, washed away the evidence.
Completely.
Yeah.
There was virtually no physical evidence, no blood trails, no obvious fingerprints, no DNA linking anyone to the murders. And because the water created this massive evidentiary vacuum, the police, who were under immense public pressure to solve a child murder, they filled that vacuum with the easiest thing available in 1993.
Which was cultural panic.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the broader context of the Satanic Panic. In the 80s and early 90s, there was this widespread, genuine cultural hysteria sweeping the country.
Oh yeah, it was everywhere on talk shows.
Fueled by talk shows and local news, suggesting that secret, underground satanic cults were operating in suburban neighborhoods.
And in West Memphis, that panic found a very convenient target in an 18-year-old local kid named Damien Eccles.
Not because of physical evidence, though.
No, not at all. Because he wore black clothing, listened to heavy metal like Metallica, read Stephen King novels, and practiced Wicca. He stood out in a conservative Bible Belt town, so he instantly became the prime suspect.
But to actually build a legal case and secure warrants, police needed more than just a teenager's musical preferences. They needed a confession.
Right.
So they targeted a peripheral acquaintance of Eccles, a 17-year-old named Jesse Miskelly.
And the breakdown of this interrogation in our sources is arguably one of the most glaring systemic failures in the entire case. Jesse Miskelly had a documented IQ of 72. Yeah, he read at a third-grade level. The police brought him in and interrogated him for 12 solid hours. And they did it without his parents and without a lawyer present.
That's just wild.
But get this, out of those 12 hours of interrogation, how much do you think was actually preserved on audio tape?
Based on how these things go, probably not much.
46 minutes.
Barely a fraction of the process. And, the psychology of false confessions tells us exactly why this happens. When you place a suggestible minor with cognitive limitations in an interrogation room for half a day,
Yeah, 12 hours is a long time.
they experience intense fatigue and a profound desire to comply with authority just to make the pressure stop.
They will literally say whatever they think the detective wants to hear so they can go home.
Precisely. During that 46-minute recorded window, Miskelly confessed and implicated Eccles and a third teenager, Jason Baldwin, but his confession was entirely incompatible with the actual crime scene.
Wait, how so?
Well, he got the time of day the murders happened completely wrong. He claimed the boys were tied with thick rope, not shoelaces.
Ah, right.
He claimed he watched them be sexually assaulted, which the autopsy explicitly proved did not happen. And almost immediately after he confessed, he recanted the whole thing.
Which makes total sense when you look at how it was extracted, Accepting a 46-minute recorded fraction of a 12-hour interrogation. It's like judging a 10-round boxing match, but the judges are only allowed to watch a 30-second highlight reel of the knockout.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. They are completely ignoring the hours of illegal low blows and exhaustion tactics that happened in the dark before the cameras ever rolled.
Yeah.
How does a jury legally convict 3 teenagers based on that?
They convict because the trial was structured around fear, bypassing scientific rigor completely.
Okay.
Since there was zero physical evidence, the prosecution utilized a cult expert named Dale Griffiths.
Oh, this guy.
Yeah, at the time, courts were sometimes far more lenient about what constituted expert testimony. Griffiths testified that the murders bore all the hallmarks of a satanic ritual.
And our sources point out, he got his PhD from a mail-order catalog. He had no formal accredited classroom training in this field whatsoever.
He didn't. But his presence on the stand gave the prosecution's narrative this veneer of academic authority. The jury was terrified, and it worked. Damien Eccles was sentenced to death, while Jason Baldwin and Jesse Miskelly were given life in prison.
And while the state was focusing all of its judicial energy on heavy metal music and mail-order experts, they were actively ignoring massive, scientifically grounded leads.
Like what?
Well, the autopsy showed Stevie Branch had green matter in his stomach, likely green beans. The mechanics of gastric emptying mean that food stays in the stomach for a relatively predictable amount of time. Stevie's mother, Pan Hobbs, had left green beans out for him that afternoon around 4 p.m.
Okay, which scientifically anchors his timeline.
Yeah.
If those beans were still undigested in his stomach, he had to have eaten them shortly before his death.
Right. But his stepfather, Terry Hobbs, claims Stevie never came home that afternoon.
Oh, wow.
That is a massive chronological discrepancy based on biological evidence.
That really is. And then there is the incident at a nearby Bojangles restaurant.
Oh, Mr. Bojangles.
Yeah. On the same night the boys disappeared, right near the woods where they were found, restaurant workers called the police to report a bleeding, highly disoriented black man in the bathroom. He was wearing a blue cast with a Velcro brace.
Okay.
The police actually went in the next day, recognized the potential significance, and took blood scrapings from the bathroom walls.
And what happened to that biological evidence?
A police detective later testified in court that he lost the blood samples. The scrapings simply vanished from the evidence chain of custody.
Unbelievable. From a purely administrative standpoint, losing blood evidence in a high-profile double homicide isn't just an oops, it's a catastrophic systemic failure.
Yep.
So, for over a decade, Eccles, Baldwin, and Miskelly, now known globally as the West Memphis Three, they sat in maximum security prison. Eccles is on death row, literally awaiting execution. But while they are locked away, the outside world is spinning forward. Genomic science is advancing.
Right. DNA testing gets much better.
Exactly. And when that new science finally makes its way back to West Memphis, it creates an absolute legal nightmare for the state of Arkansas.
So in 2001, Arkansas passed a specific DNA testing statute. And by 2007, forensic technology had advanced to the point where they could extract trace DNA from incredibly small samples. They finally performed advanced testing on the physical evidence from the '93 crime scene.
And what did they find?
Well, the results didn't just challenge the state's case, they scientifically dismantled it.
They found conclusive proof. Not a single microscopic trace of genetic material at the scene belonged to Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, or Jesse Miskelly. Nothing at all. But they didn't just find an absence of evidence. By untying the actual knots of the shoelaces used to bind the boys, scientists found a hair trapped inside the ligature knot.
A hair woven into the knot during the commission of the crime? That's huge.
Yes. They tested it, and it was found to be genetically consistent with the DNA of Terry Hobbs, Stevie's stepfather.
Wait, the same man who claimed he never saw the boys that day?
The very same man. And another hair found on a tree stump right at the crime scene matched a close friend of Terry Hobbs, a man named David Jacoby.
So the DNA literally points away from the kid sitting in prison and points directly toward the stepfather.
Exactly. So based on this undeniable biological reality, in 2010, the Arkansas Supreme Court orders a massive new evidentiary hearing. They cite this compelling new DNA evidence, along with shocking jury misconduct, because it turns out the original jury foreman had been discussing inadmissible evidence with other jurors before deliberations even started.
The state of Arkansas suddenly finds itself staring down the barrel of a highly publicized retrial. A retrial that would painfully expose the coercive interrogation tactics, the lost blood evidence, the mail-order expert, and the complete absence of physical proof.
And if the West Memphis Three are exonerated at trial, the state is looking at multi-million-dollar wrongful conviction lawsuits and a humiliating institutional reckoning.
Yeah, a PR and financial disaster. So in August 2011, literally weeks before this new hearing is supposed to happen, the prosecutors offer the defendants a highly unusual deal. They offer them the Alford plea.
Okay, so looking at the law review article we have in our sources, it seems like the Alford plea was originally designed as a shield to protect a defendant against the death penalty. But in this case, the state basically flipped it to use as a legal shield for themselves. Am I reading the mechanics of that right?
You are. Perfectly. The plea originates from a 1970 U.S. Supreme Court case, North Carolina v. Alford. Henry Alford was facing the death penalty and had strong witness evidence against him, but he swore he was innocent. The Supreme Court ruled that a defendant can voluntarily plead guilty to a crime to accept a lesser sentence, while simultaneously maintaining their factual innocence on the official court record.
Wait, hold on. If they are legally pleading guilty, doesn't a judge have to verify that they actually committed the crime? Like, verify the facts?
Exactly the issue. The legal mechanism of the Alford plea strictly requires the judge to find a strong factual basis that the defendant could be convicted by a jury.
But how on earth can a judge establish a strong factual basis for guilt when the state's own advanced DNA testing just proved the defendants weren't there? It's like, imagine the state forcing you to legally sign a binding document admitting you caused a rainstorm, even though you have a team of meteorologists standing right next to you scientifically proving you didn't do it.
Yeah.
The logic completely collapses on itself.
And that collapse is exactly what legal scholars criticize. The Law Review article warns that the Alford plea is being systemically bastardized here. In 1970, it protected a vulnerable defendant. In the West Memphis 3 case, it was inverted to protect the sovereign immunity of the state.
That makes total sense.
By legally forcing Eccles, Baldwin, and Miskelly to plead guilty as a condition of their release, the state completely insulated itself from civil liability.
Because you can't sue the state for a wrongful conviction if you are technically a legally convicted murderer on paper.
Right. The court allowed risk management and financial protection to completely override the scientific truth of the DNA. The 3 men accepted the plea because it was the only guaranteed mechanism to pull Damian Eccles off death row and get them out of prison that exact same day.
Yeah, you can't blame them for taking it.
No, not at all. They were sentenced to time served 18 years and walked out the door.
They walked out into the daylight, but they walked out as convicted child murderers. Which brings us to the final and perhaps most frustrating phase of this deep dive.
Yeah, this part is tough.
The Alford plea got the West Memphis 3 out of their cells, but it left the actual murders of Stevie, Michael, and Christopher totally unsolved. So Damian Eccles and his defense team kept fighting. They wanted to use even newer technology to find the real killer. But when they attempted to do so, they hit a literal administrative firewall.
Fast forward to the year 2020, the defense team starts heavily petitioning the state to allow something called MVAC, wet vacuum DNA testing, on the remaining evidence.
From what I understand in the sources, MVAC isn't just your standard Q-tip swab. It's a highly advanced system that sprays a sterile, DNA-free buffer solution onto a piece of evidence while simultaneously vacuuming it back up.
Exactly.
You can pull microscopic biological material from deep within the fibers of porous surfaces, like the boy's shirts or the Boy Scout cap found at the scene.
It is incredibly effective for cold cases because it accesses genetic material that 1993 technology and even 2007 technology couldn't reach. The defense team communicates with the prosecutor, and initially there is an agreement to proceed with the testing.
But then total radio silence.
Nothing.
The evidence never gets transferred to the testing lab.
Yeah.
So in 2021, Damian Eccles' legal team files a formal motion for declaratory and injunctive relief. And in that legal motion, they reveal a stunning, almost casual admission from the new prosecutor.
What did he say?
The prosecutor informs them that the physical evidence from this case has been lost, misplaced, or destroyed by fire.
Which is a profound violation of the law. The Arkansas DNA statute, passed in 2001, explicitly makes it a criminal offense for law enforcement to fail to permanently retain physical evidence in violent offenses. The mechanical requirement of the statute dictates that evidence in capital murder cases must be kept securely forever.
Lost, misplaced, or destroyed by fire. I mean, how does a police department just lose the physical evidence to the most high-profile capital murder case in state history?
That's hard to fathom.
It's like a massive bank getting robbed. And when the FBI finally arrives to review the security tapes, the bank manager just shrugs and says, "Oh, we accidentally misplaced the steel vault." It defies all administrative logic.
Yeah, and the 2021 motion notes that there were rumors circulating from the local mayor and news outlets suggesting the evidence had been moved out of secure, climate-controlled storage and into outdoor shipping containers, where a fire conveniently occurred around 15 years ago.
Wait, a fire? Just randomly?
Supposedly. But the systemic failure here is that there are no official incident reports of this fire, no administrative documentation of what specific items were destroyed, and no explanation for why the defense team and the appellate courts were kept completely in the dark about this for years while arguing over evidence that didn't exist.
And without that physical evidence, the MVAC wet vacuum testing can never happen.
It halts everything. It means the true killer can never be conclusively identified through modern science, and it means the West Memphis 3 can never secure a full legal exoneration to clear their names.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Why does a complex, messy case from 3 decades ago matter to your life today? It matters because it proves that the justice system you rely on every single day is composed of human beings.
Very flawed human beings.
Yeah. Human beings who can fall prey to cultural panic, who can develop tunnel vision, and who can easily ignore biological science when it contradicts their established narrative. Being a well-informed citizen means looking past a convenient case closed headline to see exactly the mechanisms of how that case was closed.
It demands that we critically examine the dark, unintended consequences of our legal procedures.
And we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over something that really builds on everything we've pulled from these sources today. If the state forces innocent people to take an Alford plea to avoid a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, the legal system officially categorizes those murders as solved.
Right, the books are permanently closed.
But if the books are officially closed, does the Alford plea accidentally create the ultimate legal shield for corrupt or incompetent police departments? Think about the mechanics of it.
Yeah, think about what happens next.
Once the state legally declares the defendants guilty, it instantly removes the judicial mandate and the public urgency to protect the evidence. It provides the perfect bureaucratic cover to lose, misplace, or burn the physical proof of their own investigative failures.
Wow.
By legally forcing an innocent person to confess, the system itself ensures the true killer will never, ever be caught. So you really have to ask yourself, is the Alford plea truly a tool for judicial mercy? Or is it the ultimate legal mechanism for an institutional cover-up?